The new housekeeper froze when she saw her childhood photo in the Millionaire'S room. The morning cold bit through Ava Montgomery's thin coat as she climbed the marble steps of Beaumont Manor for the first time. Her hands trembled, not from the Boston winter, but from the weight of desperation that had become her constant companion. $18,000 short, 6 weeks until Lila's surgery, 3 job rejections this month alone. This had to work. The manor loomed above her like something out of a gothic novel. All stone and stained glass. The kind of place where people like her only entered through the service entrance. But Mrs. Brennan from the employment agency had been clear. Mr. Beaumont needs someone immediately. Don't ask questions, don't make noise, just clean and leave. Ava could do that. She'd been invisible her whole life anyway. The heavy oak door opened before she could knock. A woman in her early 60s stood in the threshold. Her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her expression carved from ice. "You're late," the woman said, though Ava had arrived exactly on time. "I'm sorry. Mrs. Caldwell, I manage this household. You'll address me as such." The woman's eyes traveled over Ava's bargain store clothes with barely concealed disdain. "Mr. Beaumont values his privacy above all else. You're here to clean, not to gawk. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Caldwell." The governess stepped aside, allowing Ava into a foyer that smelled of lemon polish and old money. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, throwing rainbow fragments across walls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Everything here cost more than Ava would earn in a lifetime. She thought of Lila's pale face that morning, the way her lips had turned slightly blue while eating breakfast. The cardiologist's words echoed, "Without the surgery, I give her 6 months, maybe less. The supplies are in the closet near the kitchen," Mrs. Caldwell said, already walking away. "Start with the second floor, Mr. Beaumont's study is off limits, as is the east wing. Don't touch anything personal, don't move anything, and whatever you do, don't disturb Mr. Beaumont if you see him." "Of course, Mrs. Caldwell paused at the base of a sweeping staircase. "One more thing. Previous cleaners didn't last because they couldn't follow simple instructions. Mr. Beaumont doesn't tolerate mistakes." The warning hung in the air like a threat. Ava spent the next 2 hours working her way through bedrooms that looked like they belonged in a museum. Each one was immaculate, barely lived in, as if the house itself was holding its breath. She dusted antiques she was terrified of breaking, vacuumed Persian rugs that probably cost more than her car, and tried not to think about how a single person could need this much space. The master bedroom was at the end of a long hallway. Mrs. Caldwell had said to save it for last, and Ava understood why the moment she stepped inside. This room was different, lived in. The 4-poster bed was unmade. A book lay open on the nightstand, and a man's cologne lingered in the air, something expensive and woody. She set to work quickly, changing the sheets with practiced efficiency, dusting the dresser, organizing scattered papers. Don't look too close. Don't ask questions. Just finish and leave. But then she turned toward the side wall, and her entire world stopped. The photograph hung in an ornate silver frame, slightly crooked, as if someone had touched it recently. It showed a little girl, maybe 2 years old, with enormous dark eyes and tangled brown hair. She was sitting on a threadbare carpet, clutching a stuffed bear that had seen better days. Behind her, barely visible, was a wooden sign. "St. Helena, Home for Children." Ava's cleaning supplies clattered to the floor. That was her. That was her. She stumbled forward, her hand reaching out but stopping inches from the glass. She knew this photograph. She'd had the only copy, or so she thought, tucked in a shoebox under her bed since she was 12 years old. The same pose, the same bear, the same orphanage that had been the only home she'd known until the state moved her to a foster family. How was this possible? How was this here, in this house, on this wall? "What are you doing?" The voice cracked like a whip. Ava spun around. A man stood in the doorway, tall, probably mid-50s, with silver-threaded dark hair and eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to feel anything. He wore an expensive suit despite being home, but it hung on him like he'd lost weight and hadn't bothered to notice. This had to be Charles Beaumont. "I asked you a question." His voice was quieter now, but somehow more dangerous. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Ava's throat closed. She pointed at the photograph with a shaking hand. "That picture! Where did you get it?" Something flickered across Beaumont's face. His eyes moved from Ava to the photograph, then back again. The color drained from his features. "Get out," he said. "Please, I need to know." "Get out!" His voice broke on the last word, and Ava saw something she hadn't expected. His eyes were suddenly bright with tears he was fighting to contain. "Mr. Beaumont! Now!" He turned away sharply. His hand braced against the doorframe as if he needed it for support. Ava grabbed her supplies with numb fingers and fled. She didn't stop until she was in her car, 3 blocks away, pulled over on a side street with her forehead pressed against the steering wheel. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. "Reminder, Lila's pre-surgical consultation scheduled for next week. Please confirm payment arrangements." She couldn't lose this job, not now, but that photograph. Ava pulled out her own phone and scrolled through her photos until she found the scanned image of her childhood picture. She zoomed in, comparing every detail she could remember from the framed version in Beaumont's bedroom. They were identical, completely identical, which meant either someone had copied her photo or her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Miss Montgomery." "Mrs." Caldwell's cold voice. "Mr. Beaumont would like you to return tomorrow. Same time," he says. A pause. "He says you're not fired." The line went dead before Ava could respond. She sat in her car for another 20 minutes, staring at the photo on her phone, trying to make sense of the impossible. A billionaire she'd never met had her childhood photograph on his wall. He'd looked at her like he'd seen a ghost. And somehow, impossibly, she was supposed to go back tomorrow and pretend none of this had happened. But Lila needed that surgery, and Ava had learned a long time ago that when you had nothing, you didn't get to ask questions. You just survived. She started the car and headed back to the small apartment in Dorchester where her daughter was waiting, probably curled up on the couch watching cartoons. Her lips still tinged with blue. Ava didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. That photograph was about to change everything. Ava barely slept that night, every time she closed her eyes. She saw Charles Beaumont's face, the way the color had drained from it, the tears he'd fought to hide. She'd pulled out her shoebox from under the bed and spent hours staring at her copy of the photograph, searching for answers that refused to come. Lila had woken up around 3 a.m, coughing. Ava had held her daughter until the fit passed, feeling the fragile bird beat of her heart against her palm. Too fast. Always too fast. "Mama, why are you sad?" Lila had whispered. "I'm not sad. Baby, just tired." "You're always tired now." Ava had kissed her forehead and hummed until Lila drifted back to sleep. But the words lingered. She was failing at the one thing that mattered, keeping her daughter from seeing how scared she really was. The next morning, climbing those marble steps felt different. Yesterday, she'd been desperate for a job. Today, she was walking into something she didn't understand, and that terrified her more than poverty ever had. Mrs. Caldwell opened the door before Ava could knock, as if she'd been waiting. "Mr. Beaumont wants to see you," she said without preamble. "In the library, follow me." They walked through hallways Ava hadn't seen yesterday, past rooms filled with furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts. The library was at the back of the house, a 2-story room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a rolling ladder, and windows that overlooked a garden gone wild with winter. Charles Beaumont stood with his back to the door, staring out at the overgrown roses. "That'll be all, Mrs. Caldwell," he said quietly. The governess left without a word, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The silence stretched. Ava stood near the doorway, unsure if she should speak or wait. Her fingers twisted the strap of her purse. 27 years ago, Beaumont finally said, his voice rough like he'd been awake all night too. "My wife Evelyn gave birth to our daughter. We named her Charlotte. She had her mother's eyes, dark, intelligent, always watching." He turned to face Ava, and she saw he looked 10 years older than yesterday. When Charlotte was 2 years old, she was admitted to Massachusetts General Hospital with a fever. Routine. Nothing serious. My wife stayed with her overnight. I had a meeting I couldn't miss. The biggest contract of my career. He moved to the desk and pulled out a worn leather folder. The next morning, I got a call from the hospital. My daughter had died during the night. Sudden cardiac arrest, they said. Unexplained. My wife. His voice cracked. Evelyn never recovered. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. 6 months later, she took her own life. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. For 20 years, I believed that was the truth. I built this company into an empire because work was the only thing that kept me from following Evelyn into the dark. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of documents. Then, 7 years ago, a private investigator found something. The nurse who'd been on duty the night Charlotte died. She'd deposited $50,000 into her account 3 days later. When he tried to track her down, she'd disappeared, changed her name, vanished. Ava stepped closer, her heart hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying my daughter didn't die in that hospital. I'm saying someone took her. His eyes locked on Ava's. I spent the next 5 years chasing ghosts, false leads, dead ends, con artists who sensed desperation. 2 years ago, the investigator found a photograph in the archives of St. Helena Home for Children. A little girl approximately the right age, with no birth certificate on file. No record of where she came from. Just there. He pulled out a photocopy and laid it on the desk. It was her photograph, the same one from his wall. The orphanage told me they had no records. Said there'd been a fire in their records room years ago. Everything before 1995 was destroyed. He looked at Ava with something like hope and terror mixed together. But I kept that photograph. I've looked at it every day for 2 years, wondering if I was losing my mind, if grief had finally broken me. Ava's legs felt weak. She sank into the leather chair across from his desk. I grew up in St. Helena, she heard herself say. The nuns told me I was found on the steps when I was a baby. No note, no name, nothing. They named me Ava because it meant life. I was in the system until I aged out at 18. No birth certificate. No, nothing official. I had to petition the court for identification when I turned 16. They gave me papers based on the orphanage's testimony, but there's no record of where I came from. She looked up at him. That photograph, a nun named Sister Margaret gave it to me when I left. Said it was the only picture they had of me. I thought it was the only copy that existed. Charles sat down heavily in his chair. He looked like he wanted to believe her, but couldn't quite let himself. How old are you? 27? I'll be 28 in March. Charlotte would be 27. Her birthday is March 15th. The room tilted. Ava gripped the armrests. This isn't possible. I know. He pulled out his phone. But there's a way to find out for certain. A DNA test. It takes 2 weeks for results, but yes. The word came out too fast, too desperate. Ava forced herself to breathe. I need to know. I didn't come here looking for this. I came here because my daughter needs surgery and I'm $18,000 short, and every other job turned me down. I came here because I'm out of options, but that photograph? Tell me about your daughter. The shift in topic caught her off guard. Lila, she's 5. She was born with a congenital heart defect. Without surgery, Ava's throat closed. She doesn't have much time. Something changed in Beaumont's expression. The walls he'd kept up cracked just slightly. What's the surgery cost? I'm not asking you for money, Ava said quickly. That's not why I'm telling you this. I know. He opened a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. But if there's even a chance you're my daughter, if there's any possibility at all, I'm not going to let my granddaughter die while we wait for test results. I can't accept that. Yes. You can? He started writing. Consider it an advance on your salary. You'll be working here full-time while we sort this out. Mrs. Caldwell will arrange your schedule. Mr. Beaumont? Charles? He looked up, and his eyes were wet again. If you're Charlotte, you should call me Charles, and if you're not, he swallowed hard, then I'll have helped save a child's life, and that's something Evelyn would have wanted. He slid the check across the desk. Ava looked down at the number, enough to cover the surgery, the hospital stay, everything, and tears blurred her vision. Why are you doing this? Because for the first time in 27 years, I have hope, and hope is terrifying, but it's better than the nothing I've been living with. He stood, suddenly looking exhausted. Go be with your daughter. Bring her here if you need to. This house has been empty for too long anyway. Ava took the check with shaking hands. Thank you. I don't know what else to say, just Thank you. Save your daughter. That's all the thanks I need." As she left the library, she heard him sink back into his chair with a sound that might have been a sob. Mrs. Caldwell stood in the hallway, her expression unreadable. "He's a good man," the governess said quietly, "but he's been broken for a long time. I hope you're not here to break him further." "I'm not here to break anyone," Ava replied. "I'm just trying to survive. Aren't we all?" Mrs. Caldwell's eyes narrowed slightly. "But survival looks different depending on who you are. Remember that." The warning was clear. Ava clutched the check tighter and walked toward the door, her mind spinning with impossibilities that were suddenly, terrifyingly, becoming possible. Behind her, she didn't see the man watching from the second-floor window. Nathaniel Pierce had arrived early for his weekly meeting with Charles, and he'd heard every word through the library's half-open door. His reflection in the glass was perfectly calm, but his hands, hidden in his pockets, were clenched into fists. Nathaniel Pierce had built his career on reading people, and right now, Charles Beaumont was an open book written in desperation and hope that made him dangerous, to himself, to the company, and most importantly, to Nathaniel's carefully constructed empire. He waited until Ava had left before knocking on the library door. "Come in," Charles called, his voice still rough. Nathaniel entered with the easy confidence of someone who'd been doing this for decades. At 48, he looked like he'd stepped out of an architecture magazine. Tailored Italian suit, silver-streaked hair perfectly styled, a smile that put investors at ease and sealed million-dollar deals. "You're early," Charles said, not looking up from the papers on his desk. Traffic was light. Nathaniel took his usual seat, crossing one leg over the other. "Who was that woman I saw leaving, new housekeeper?" "Something like that." Mrs. Caldwell finally retiring. "No." Charles closed the folder, but not before Nathaniel caught a glimpse of the photograph inside. "It's nothing you need to concern yourself with." But Nathaniel made it his business to concern himself with everything that affected Charles Beaumont. That's how he'd gone from junior architect to partner in 15 years. That's how he'd secured 40% of the company's shares. That's how he'd positioned himself to take over completely when Charles inevitably stepped down. "Fair enough." He opened his briefcase. "I brought the contracts for the seaport development. If we close this deal, we're looking at a $200 million project. Biggest thing we've done since." "I need to postpone our meeting," Charles interrupted. "Something's come up." Nathaniel's smile didn't waver. "Of course, everything all right. Just personal matters. I'll call you later this week." It took everything in Nathaniel not to push. Instead, he gathered his papers with practiced patience. "Take all the time you need. You know I've got your back." He did have Charles's back, pressed firmly against a wall where Nathaniel could control every move. The moment he left Beaumont Manor, Nathaniel made a call. "Marcus, I need you to run a background check. Woman named Ava Montgomery, late 20s, probably has a connection to St. Helena Orphanage. I want everything: employment history, financial records, criminal background, associates, and I need it today." He hung up and sat in his car for a moment, thinking. Charles had been withdrawn for years, buried in grief and work. Nathaniel had liked it that way. A distracted Charles meant more control for Nathaniel, more opportunities to steer the company, more time to consolidate power. But that look in Charles's eyes today, that was the look of a man waking up and awake. Men asked questions. By evening, Marcus had delivered. Nathaniel read the report in his downtown office, his jaw tightening with each page. Ava Montgomery, 27 years old, widow, one daughter, 5 years old, with a serious heart condition requiring expensive surgery, currently $18,000 in debt to Massachusetts General Hospital, the same hospital where Charlotte Beaumont had supposedly died. That couldn't be coincidence. The orphanage records were sparse, almost suspiciously so. No birth certificate, no paper trail before age 2, just a notation that she'd been found and placed in the system. Nathaniel pulled out his own files, the ones he kept in a locked drawer that no one else knew about. Files from 27 years ago, when he'd been a hungry 21-year-old architecture student working nights as a security consultant, when a nurse named Patricia Hendricks had approached him with a proposition that would change his life. He'd been smart about it. The money had been moved through enough accounts that it looked legitimate. The nurse had disappeared to Costa Rica with her payout. The hospital records had been adjusted by people who knew how to make problems disappear. And the baby, well, she'd gone somewhere she'd never be found. Except apparently, she had been found. By Charles. After all these years, Nathaniel made another call. "Dr. Patterson, it's Nathaniel Pierce. I need a favor regarding some lab work." 3 days later, Ava returned to Beaumont Manor with Lila. Charles had insisted, saying the house had a guest suite that sat empty, and Lila shouldn't be alone in an apartment while recovering from pre-surgical treatments. Mrs. Caldwell met them at the door, her expression as cold as ever. "Mr. Beaumont is in meetings all morning. I'll show you to your rooms." But her eyes lingered on Lila, pale, thin, with dark circles under her eyes that made her look older than 5, and something softened almost imperceptibly. "Come along then," she said, her voice marginally warmer. The guest suite was bigger than Ava's entire apartment. Lila gasped at the canopy bed, the window seat overlooking the garden, the bookshelf full of children's classics. "Is this really for me, Mama? Just for a little while, baby? It's like a princess room." After Lila fell asleep, exhausted from the morning's hospital visit, Ava ventured downstairs. She found Charles in the library, staring at spreadsheets but clearly not seeing them. "How is she?" he asked immediately. "Tired. The pre-op treatments are rough." Ava sat in what was becoming her usual chair. "The surgery's scheduled for next month. Dr. Chen says she's optimistic." "Good. That's good." He set down his pen. "The DNA test has been sent to the lab. Results should be back in 10 days. Have you thought about what happens if you're not Charlotte?" He smiled sadly. "Then I'll have met a remarkable woman who's fighting like hell for her daughter. And I'll help however I can. And if I am," the question hung between them, "then I get something I thought I'd lost forever," he said quietly. "A second chance." The moment was interrupted by voices in the hallway. Mrs. Caldwell's clipped tones and a man's smooth baritone. "I told him I'd check if he was available," Mrs. Caldwell was saying. "I'll just pop my head in. We're partners after all." Nathaniel Pierce walked into the library before Mrs. Caldwell could stop him. His eyes landed on Ava, and his smile could have frozen water. "I'm sorry, Charles, I didn't realize you had company." He extended his hand to Ava. "Nathaniel Pierce. I'm Charles's business partner, Ava Montgomery." She shook his hand. His grip was firm, just a fraction too tight. "Ah, the new housekeeper. Mrs. Caldwell mentioned you'd started." His tone was pleasant, but his eyes were calculating. "Quite the step up from your previous employment, I imagine." "Nathaniel?" Charles's voice held a warning. "I'm just making conversation." Nathaniel turned back to Charles. "I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss the Henderson contract. They're threatening to pull out if we don't provide additional guarantees. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "Afraid not. They want an answer by end of day." He glanced at Ava. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss confidential business matters in front of the staff." The dismissal was clear. Ava stood. "I should check on Lila anyway." As she left, she caught Nathaniel watching her with an expression that made her skin crawl. It was the look of someone who'd found a problem and was already calculating how to eliminate it that night. Nathaniel made more calls, to the lab processing the DNA test, to his lawyer, to Marcus again, with new instructions. "I need you to dig deeper. Find anything we can use. Unpaid parking tickets, bounced checks, angry exes, and check her social media. I want to know everyone she's talked to in the last 5 years. What exactly are we looking for? Proof that she's a gold digger. Because that's exactly what she is." Nathaniel stared out his office window at the glittering Boston skyline. "And I'm going to make damn sure Charles sees it before she destroys everything we've built." By morning, rumors had begun to spread among the manor's staff. The new woman was trying to seduce Mr. Beaumont. She'd claimed to be his long-lost daughter. She was after his money. The gossip grew with each retelling, and at the center of it all, pulling invisible strings, was Nathaniel Pierce. He'd learned long ago that you didn't need to destroy someone directly. You just needed to make everyone else do it for you. The hostility started small. A maid who forgot to bring fresh towels. A cook who suddenly couldn't accommodate Lila's dietary restrictions. Whispered conversations that stopped the moment Ava entered a room. She'd dealt with being invisible her whole life, but being actively despised was something new and infinitely worse. By the end of the first week, Ava was ready to pack up and leave. The only thing stopping her was Lila. who'd fallen in love with the library and spent hours curled up in the window seat, reading books about princesses and dragons. "Mama, why don't the people here like us?" Lila asked one evening. "They don't know us yet, baby. People are sometimes afraid of new things." "Are we scary?" Ava pulled her daughter close. "No, sweetheart. We're not scary at all. But someone was making them seem that way." Ava had caught fragments of rumors. That she'd targeted Charles deliberately. That she was some kind of con artist. That her daughter might not even be sick. The cruelty of it took her breath away. She was in the kitchen late one night, making tea for Lila, who couldn't sleep, when Mrs. Caldwell appeared in the doorway. The governess stood there for a long moment, just watching. "You're doing it wrong," she finally said. Ava looked down at the tea bag she'd just dunked. "I'm sorry. The water needs to be exactly 90 degrees for chamomile. Any hotter and it becomes bitter." Mrs. Caldwell moved to the stove with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Beaumont drinks it every night, has for 20 years. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. You're not supposed to." She prepared the tea properly, then surprised Ava by pouring a second cup. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Ava sat. Mrs. Caldwell settled across from her, her posture perfect even at midnight. "You hold your teacup the same way she did." "Who?" "Mrs. Beaumont." "Evelyn." The governess's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Both hands wrapped around it, like you're trying to steal its warmth. She did that too, especially after Charlotte. She stopped, collecting herself. "I've worked in this house for 30 years. I knew Evelyn when she was vibrant and full of life. I watched her die by inches after her daughter disappeared, and I've watched Mr. Beaumont turn himself into a ghost for 27 years. Ava wrapped her hands tighter around the cup. "I'm not trying to hurt him. I didn't ask for any of this. I know." Mrs. Caldwell took a sip of her tea. "I've been watching you, really watching, not just listening to the gossip that certain people are spreading." "Mr. Pierce?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." A ghost of a smile crossed the governess's face. "You're observant. Evelyn was too." She set down her cup with precise care. 3 nights ago, I watched through the doorway as Mr. Beaumont had a panic attack in his study. It happens sometimes. Memories of that night in the hospital. The guilt he carries. He can't breathe, can't think, just drowns in it usually. He rides it out alone. That's awful. But you didn't let him. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes were suddenly sharp. You walked in without permission, sat beside him, and talked him through it. You didn't touch him, didn't make it about you, just sat there and breathed with him until he could breathe on his own. And when it was over, you left without asking for anything. Ava remembered. She'd been passing the study on her way to check on Lila and heard Charles gasping. She'd acted on instinct, the way she did when Lila woke from nightmares. Evelyn used to do that, Mrs. Caldwell said softly. Exactly that. She'd sit with him and just breathe. It was their thing, their language. She stood, picking up both cups. "The gossip stops now. I'll see to it. Why are you helping me?" The governess paused at the door. "Because for 27 years, I've watched Mr. Beaumont survive but not live. And for the first time since Evelyn died, I saw him laugh yesterday. Really laugh. When your daughter showed him that ridiculous dance she made up." Her voice was thick. "I don't know if you're Charlotte, but I know Evelyn would want him to have this. Whatever this is, hope, family, a reason to keep going. So I'm choosing to believe you're not here to destroy him." She left before Ava could respond. The next morning, the atmosphere shifted. The maids were cordial. The cook prepared Lila's favorite pancakes without being asked. And when Ava entered a room, conversations continued instead of stopping dead. Mrs. Caldwell's influence, apparently, reached everywhere. Charles found Ava in the garden that afternoon, watching Lila chase butterflies that were brave enough to emerge despite the cold. "She's got good lungs when she's happy," he observed, sitting on the stone bench beside her. "The doctor says keeping her spirits up helps with recovery. Something about stress hormones and healing." Ava smiled as Lila stumbled and caught herself laughing. "She's been so happy here. I think she's pretending we're in a fairy tale." "Maybe we are." He was quiet for a moment. "I got a call from Dr. Chen. She wants to move up the surgery date. Says Lila's test results show some concerning changes." Ava's breath caught. How soon? 3 weeks. I told her that was fine, that money wasn't an issue. He turned to look at her. But I should have asked you first. She's your daughter. You make the decisions. No, that's... If Dr. Chen thinks sooner is better, then yes, absolutely. Ava's hands were shaking. 3 weeks, God. 3 weeks. She's going to be okay, Charles said, and he sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Dr. Chen is the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in New England, and Lila's strong, I can see that. She gets that from her father. Ava's voice cracked. David, my husband. He fought until the very end, 15 hours trapped in that collapsed building, and he never stopped trying to get back to us. I'm sorry. That must have been unbearable. It was, but he gave me Lila, and she's everything. She's why I keep going. Ava wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. You're not falling apart. You're being human. Charles pulled out his handkerchief, actual cloth, monogrammed, and handed it to her. And you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Whatever happens with the DNA test, whatever the truth is, you're not alone in this. The words broke something in Ava. She'd been alone for so long, fighting every battle by herself, that the offer of help felt almost painful. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. This could all be some elaborate scam. Is it? No. Then there's your answer. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Besides, Nathaniel thinks you're a gold digger, which automatically makes me want to believe you're not. You don't trust your business partner. I trust him with contracts and blueprints, not with people. Charles's expression darkened. He's been acting strange since you arrived, more aggressive than usual. I think he's worried about the company if... He trailed off. If I'm your daughter and inherit everything. Something like that. He stood, brushing off his pants. But that's my problem, not yours. Come on, let's go see if we can catch some of those butterflies with Lila. I haven't chased butterflies in 27 years. They spent the afternoon in the garden, the three of them. And for a few hours, Ava let herself pretend this was real, that she belonged here, that Lila had a grandfather who adored her, that maybe, impossibly, she'd found her family. She didn't see Nathaniel watching from his car parked down the street, his phone raised, taking photographs. Evidence, he called it. Ammunition would be more accurate. That evening, Nathaniel sent the photos to 3 carefully selected members of the board of directors, along with a message. Thought you should see how our CEO is spending company time. Concerns about his judgment. He also placed a call to the lab handling the DNA test. Dr. Patterson, just checking in on those results. Any chance we can expedite things? I have some colleagues who might be very interested in the findings. A pause. Financially interested, if you understand my meaning. By the time he hung up, Nathaniel was smiling. Charles thought he was being kind, helping a struggling mother. What he didn't realize was that every kindness could be reframed as impropriety. Every moment of connection could be twisted into something sordid. Nathaniel had spent 27 years building his empire on the foundation of a dead baby. He wasn't about to let that baby, now grown, destroy everything he'd created. The war had begun, and Ava didn't even know she was fighting it. The DNA results were supposed to arrive in 10 days. It had been 12, then 14, then 16. Each time Charles called the lab, they had a new excuse. Technical difficulties, contaminated samples, equipment malfunctions. He was beginning to suspect something was wrong, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what. Ava tried not to let the waiting consume her, but it was impossible. Every morning she woke up wondering if today would be the day they'd finally know the truth. Every night she went to bed still in limbo, caught between 2 impossible realities. Lila's surgery was now just 10 days away, and Dr. Chen had scheduled a final round of preoperative tests. Charles insisted on driving them to the hospital himself. You don't have to do this, Ava said as he opened the car door for her. I know you have that meeting with the investors. Nathaniel can handle it. This is more important. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. Ava couldn't remember the last time someone had chosen her over something else. The hospital visit took most of the morning. Lila was poked and prodded, her blood drawn, her heart monitored. She was brave through all of it. But by the end, She was exhausted and clingy. "Can we go home now, Mama?" she whispered. Home. She'd called the manor home. Charles carried Lila to the car while she dozed against his shoulder, and Ava saw something in his face that made her chest ache. He looked at Lila the way a grandfather should, with fierce protectiveness and infinite tenderness. They were halfway back to Beacon Hill when Charles's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's Mrs. Caldwell. She never calls unless it's urgent," he answered on speaker. "What's wrong?" "You need to come home immediately." The gouvernante's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "There's someone here. Someone you need to speak with." "Who?" "Sister Agnes from St. Helena Orphanage." A pause. "She says she's been carrying a secret for 27 years. And she's ready to tell the truth." The old woman sat in the library, tiny and frail in the wingback chair, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that Mrs. Caldwell had prepared. She looked to be in her late 70s, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. Charles had settled Lila in the guest suite with a movie before returning downstairs. Now he stood in the library doorway with Ava beside him, neither of them quite able to move. "Sister Agnes," Charles finally said, "I tried to find you 2 years ago. The orphanage said you'd retired to Rhode Island." "Providence." The nun's voice was papery with age. "I'm in a care facility now, but when I heard you were looking for answers, I knew I had to come." Her eyes moved to Ava. "And you? I remember you. You always were a solemn little thing. Those big dark eyes watching everything." Ava's throat was tight. "You gave me that photograph, the day I left for foster care." "I did. It was the only thing I had of yours from those early years. Everything else." She trailed off, her hands shaking slightly. "Everything else? I hid." Charles moved into the room, sitting on the edge of his desk. "What do you mean you hid it?" 25 years ago, a man came to see me at the orphanage. Wealthy, young, arrogant. He said he'd heard we had documents related to a child with no birth certificate, a little girl who'd appeared with no explanation. He offered me $50,000 to destroy those records. The room went very still. "Did you?" Charles's voice was barely above a whisper. "No, but I lied and said I did." Sister Agnes set down her teacup with trembling hands. "I was a nun, Mr. Beaumont. Vows of poverty meant nothing to me, but the truth, that meant everything. So I took those documents and I hid them in the basement of the old church building, the one they demolished 5 years ago. Then they're gone," Ava said, her heart sinking. "Not quite." The nun reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope, yellowed with age. "Before they demolished the church, I went back, broke into the basement myself, at 73 years old, mind you, and I retrieved them. I've kept them safe ever since, waiting for the right moment." She held out the envelope to Charles with shaking hands. He took it like it might shatter. Inside were documents, faded and fragile, medical records from Massachusetts General Hospital. An admission form dated 27 years ago for a female infant, 2 years old, admitted with a fever. And then, in handwriting that had nearly faded to nothing, a note, "Patient Charlotte Beaumont, transferred to morgue, 3:47 a.m. But there was another document underneath, a second admission form, this one for St. Helena Orphanage, dated the same day. A female child, approximately 2 years old, no identification, found on the steps. "They're the same child," Charles breathed. "The timing, the same night," Sister Agnes confirmed. "I didn't understand it at first. We got children left at the orphanage all the time, but this one was different. She came with a nurse, Patricia something, I never got her last name, who said the baby had been abandoned and asked if we could take her. No paperwork, no explanation, just, here's a child. Goodbye." "That doesn't make sense," Ava said. "If I was stolen from the hospital, why would they bring me to an orphanage? Why not just—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Because a dead baby with no body raises questions," Charles said, his voice hollow. "But if the baby's body went to the morgue, and a different baby appeared at an orphanage across town, who would connect them, especially after 27 years? Sister Agnes nodded. "A few years later, that same man came back. The wealthy one. He'd aged, grown more powerful looking. He was more aggressive this time, threatening me. Told me if I ever spoke about those documents, I'd regret it. He knew where I lived, where I worked. He said accidents happened to people who didn't keep their mouths shut. Did you get his name? Charles asked. Though from the look on his face, Ava suspected he already knew. I did. He had business cards made by then, very fancy. The nun's eyes were sharp, despite her age. Nathaniel Pierce, architect, partner at some big engineering firm. The name dropped like a bomb. Ava felt the room tilt. Nathaniel Pierce, Charles's business partner, the man who'd looked at her with barely concealed hostility from the moment they'd met. Charles had gone pale. That's not possible. Nathaniel was just a kid 27 years ago. He stopped thinking. He was 21, working his way through architecture school. 21 is old enough to be desperate, Sister Agnes said quietly. Old enough to do terrible things for money. But why? Ava's voice cracked. What did he gain from stealing a baby? I don't know the why, the nun admitted. I only know the what. And the what is that your daughter, she looked at Ava, that you, child, came to us under circumstances that never made sense. And for 25 years, I've carried the weight of staying silent because I was afraid. Why come forward now? Charles asked. Sister Agnes smiled sadly. Because I'm 78 years old with stage 4 cancer. I'm not afraid of Nathaniel Pierce anymore. I'm afraid of meeting my maker with this lie on my conscience. She looked between Charles and Ava. You deserve the truth, both of you, whatever that truth is. Charles carefully gathered the documents, his hands shaking. These alone aren't enough to prove Ava is Charlotte, but they're enough to prove something happened that night, something criminal. What about the DNA test? Ava asked. The results still haven't come back. They won't. Charles's expression hardened. Nathaniel's been delaying them. I'd bet my life on it. Then we get a new test, different lab today. Ava stood, suddenly filled with purpose. If he's been manipulating the results, that means he knows something. It means he's afraid. Mrs. Caldwell appeared in the doorway. Pardon the interruption, but Mr. Pierce just called. He's on his way over, says he needs to discuss something urgent about the seaport development. Tell him I'm unavailable, Charles said immediately. I already tried, he said he'd wait. The gouvernant's expression was troubled. He sounded agitated. Charles and Ava exchanged glances. He knows, Ava whispered. Somehow he knows we're getting close. Let him wait. Charles turned back to Sister Agnes. Would you be willing to testify to all of this, officially? That's why I came. The nun's voice was steel beneath the fragility. I've spent 25 years being a coward. It's time to be brave. Outside, Nathaniel Pierce sat in his car. Watching the manor, his contact at the care facility had warned him that Sister Agnes had left that morning, headed to Boston. He'd known immediately where she was going. Everything was falling apart, and he could feel his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. But he'd built an empire on lies before. He could do it again. He just needed to make sure the right people looked guilty when everything finally came to light. And if that meant destroying Charles Beaumont's last chance at happiness, well, sacrifices had to be made. Nathaniel waited exactly 30 minutes before deciding Charles wasn't going to see him. That was fine. He had other moves to make. He drove directly to his lawyer's office in downtown Boston, a sleek high-rise where men in expensive suits made problems disappear. I need you to prepare something for me, Nathaniel said, sliding a folder across the mahogany desk. A restraining order and documents to petition for emergency custody evaluation. Martin Schreiber, attorney for 15 years, barely raised an eyebrow. Against whom? Ava Montgomery. She's currently living at Charles Beaumont's estate with her daughter. I have reason to believe she's engaged in elder exploitation and fraud. That's a serious accusation. What's your evidence? Nathaniel pulled out his phone and scrolled through the photographs he'd taken. Ava and Charles in the garden. Ava entering the manor with luggage. Ava accepting what looked like a check. Each image carefully selected, each one capable of being interpreted in the worst possible light. She moved into his home within days of meeting him. She's accepting money from him. And I have recordings. He pulled out a small device of conversations where she explicitly says she'll do anything to get money for her daughter's medical bills. Schreiber listened to the edited audio clip, Ava's voice taken out of context. Sounded calculating and mercenary. Charles Beaumont is a vulnerable man. Nathaniel continued. He lost his daughter 27 years ago. He's never recovered. And now this woman appears, claiming to be that daughter, conveniently when she needs money for her child's expensive surgery. It's textbook exploitation. You realize that if you file this, it becomes public record. The media will have a field day. I'm aware, but I'd rather deal with bad press than watch my partner be destroyed by a con artist. Nathaniel's voice was perfectly calibrated. Concerned, reluctant, protective. I've known Charles for 25 years. I can't stand by and watch this happen. Schreiber made notes. I'll need more than photographs and audio clips. Do you have financial records? Evidence of coercion? Working on it. But I need you to prepare the paperwork now. We may need to move fast. What Nathaniel didn't mention was that he'd already been in contact with the hospital where Lila was scheduled for surgery. A few carefully placed words with the billing department about potential insurance fraud. A suggestion that perhaps Ms. Montgomery's financial documentation should be more thoroughly reviewed. Nothing explicit, nothing traceable, just enough to create doubt. He'd also reached out to 3 members of Beaumont and Pierce's board of directors, the ones most concerned about the company's image. He'd shared his concerns about Charles's judgment, his attachment to this mysterious woman, the potential legal liability if the situation went south. Seeds of doubt. That's all he needed to plant. Back at the manor, Charles had called Dr. Helena Rodriguez, a geneticist he trusted, and arranged for new DNA samples to be collected that afternoon. This time, he personally drove them to the lab and watched them get processed. Results in 48 hours, Dr. Rodriguez promised. I'll call you the moment they're ready. But 48 hours felt like an eternity. Ava spent the afternoon with Sister Agnes, going through the documents, trying to piece together what had happened that night. 27 years ago, Mrs. Caldwell brought tea and sandwiches, hovering protectively. There's something else, Sister Agnes said, pulling out a small leather journal. I kept notes. Not much. Just observations about the children. I wasn't supposed to. Privacy regulations. But I did it anyway. She flipped to a page dated a few months after Ava had arrived at the orphanage. Baby A, as we call her having no name, has night terrors, screams for mama in her sleep. Dr. Chen says it's unusual for a child so young to have such vivid trauma responses. Makes me wonder what this baby has already survived. Ava's eyes burned. I still have nightmares sometimes. Dreams of white walls and beeping machines. I always thought they were just anxiety dreams. Or memories, Charles said quietly. He'd been reading over her shoulder. Hospitals have white walls. Medical equipment beeps. Another entry, months later. Baby A clings to her stuffed bear like it's a life raft. Won't let anyone else touch it. Maria tried to wash it today and the child had a complete meltdown. When I examined the bear, I found initials sewn into the tag. CB. Charles's breath caught. Charlotte Beaumont. Evelyn sewed those initials. I remember because I teased her about it. Who monograms a teddy bear? She said it was so Charlotte would always know she was loved, that she belonged to someone. Do you still have that bear? Sister Agnes asked Ava. No, it fell apart when I was 7. I cried for weeks. Ava wiped her eyes. I didn't know why it mattered so much. It was just a bear. It wasn't just a bear, Charles said. It was the only thing you had left of your real family. The moment was interrupted by raised voices in the hallway. Nathaniel's voice, insistent and angry, and Mrs. Caldwell's, coldly refusing him entry. I'm his business partner. You can't keep me out. Mr. Beaumont left explicit instructions. This is ridiculous. Charles strode to the library door and yanked it open. What do you want, Nathaniel? Nathaniel's expression shifted instantly from anger to concern. Charles, thank God we need to talk. Privately. His eyes flicked to Ava and Sister Agnes. It's about the company. Urgent board matters. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of everyone here. Charles, please, be reasonable. Nathaniel lowered his voice. The board is concerned. There are questions about your judgment lately. Questions you've been planting, you mean. Nathaniel's mask slipped for just a second. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Charles stepped into the hallway, forcing Nathaniel to back up. I know you've been calling board members. I know you've been spreading rumors about Ava. And I know you've been interfering with the DNA test results. That's absurd. Is it? Because I just got off the phone with Dr. Patterson at the original lab. He was very apologetic about the delays, said someone had been pressuring him to alter the results. Wouldn't give me a name, but he did mention that this person had made it worth his while financially. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. You're being paranoid. This woman has gotten into your head. Her name is Ava, and there's a very good chance she's my daughter. Based on what? A photograph? A sad story? Nathaniel's voice rose. Charles, listen to yourself. She's a nobody from nowhere with a sick kid and a mountain of debt. She found your weakness and she's exploiting it. Get out! I'm trying to protect you. No. Charles's voice was ice. You're trying to protect yourself, because if Ava is Charlotte, everything changes. The company, the inheritance, your position, all of it. And that terrifies you. Of course it terrifies me. Nathaniel finally dropped the pretense. I've given 25 years to this company. I built it back up when you were too broken to function. I earned my place here. By stealing my daughter. The accusation hung in the air between them. Nathaniel went very still. What did you just say? We know, Nathaniel. Sister Agnes told us everything. The nurse, the payoff, your threats, all of it. For a moment, genuine fear flickered across Nathaniel's face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. You have no proof. An old nun's rambling accusations against a respected businessman. Good luck with that. We have documents, medical records, timestamps that prove Charlotte was at the hospital and at the orphanage the same night. Charles stepped closer. And we're running new DNA tests that you can't interfere with. I want you out of my house, Charles said. And first thing Monday morning, I'm calling an emergency board meeting to discuss dissolving our partnership. You can't do that without a majority vote. Watch me. Nathaniel smiled, and it was the coldest thing Ava had ever seen. You're making a mistake, Charles. A very expensive mistake for both of you. He turned and left, but not before his eyes locked on Ava with such hatred that she instinctively stepped back the moment the door closed behind him. Mrs. Caldwell appeared. Should I call security? Have them ban him from the property? Yes, immediately. Charles ran his hand through his hair. And call our lawyer. We're going to need protection. Protection from what? Ava asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. From a man with everything to lose. Charles looked at her, and his expression was grim. Nathaniel's dangerous when he's cornered, and we just backed him into a corner. That night, Nathaniel sat in his penthouse apartment, making calls to the board members, to his lawyer, to certain contacts who specialized in making damaging information public at precisely the right moment. If Charles wanted war, Nathaniel would give him war, and in war, there were always casualties. He pulled up a file on his computer, everything he'd gathered on Ava Montgomery, her financial troubles, her dead husband, her sick daughter, all of it could be weaponized. He started typing an email to a journalist he knew, one who specialized in exposés about the wealthy and their scandals. Confidential tip: Boston billionaire Charles Beaumont being exploited by con artist posing as long-lost daughter. Vulnerable elderly man, desperate woman, sick child used as leverage, documents and photos attached. His finger hovered over the send button. Then he pressed it. The article hit online at 6 a.m. By 7, it had been picked up by 3 major news outlets. By 8, there were reporters camped outside Beaumont Manor's gates. Billionaire's lost daughter, or clever con, inside the story of Charles Beaumont's mysterious new heir. Ava saw it when she went downstairs to make Lila's breakfast. She'd been scrolling through her phone, checking the weather. When the news alert popped up, her own face stared back at her from the screen. One of those photos Nathaniel had taken in the garden, cropped to make her look calculating, predatory. The article was a masterpiece of insinuation. It never outright called her a liar, but every sentence was designed to make readers think it. Her debts were mentioned, Lila's expensive surgery, the convenient timing of her employment at the manor, anonymous sources, clearly Nathaniel, expressing concern about Charles's mental state. Oh God, Ava whispered. Her phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, one after another. Reporters. She turned it off with shaking hands. Mrs. Caldwell found her standing frozen in the kitchen, still staring at the screen. I know. the governante said quietly. Mr. Beaumont knows too. He's in his study calling lawyers. She took the phone gently from Ava's hands. Come, sit, I'll make tea. I should leave, Ava said. This is destroying his reputation, everything he's built. You'll do no such thing. Mrs. Caldwell's voice was sharp. That's exactly what Nathaniel wants for you to run, so he can say he was right all along. But Lila, the reporters are being handled. Mr. Beaumont has security coming. No one gets past the gates. She pressed a cup of tea into Ava's hands. Breathe, child. We've weathered worse storms than this. But the storm was just beginning. At 9, Charles's lawyer called with devastating news. 3 board members were calling for an emergency vote to remove Charles as CEO, citing erratic behavior and questionable judgment. Nathaniel had been thorough, building his case for weeks. At 10, the hospital called. There were concerns about Ava's financial documentation. They needed to verify certain information before Lila's surgery could proceed. The implication was clear. They thought she was committing fraud. At 11, a sheriff's deputy arrived at the door with papers. Nathaniel had filed for an emergency custody evaluation, claiming Lila was in an unstable and potentially dangerous environment. That's when Ava broke. No, she said, backing away from the papers like they might burn her. No, you can't. She's my daughter. She's sick. She needs me. Ma'am, this is just a hearing, the deputy said, not unkindly. A judge will review the circumstances, but you'll need to appear in court tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow, her surgery is in 6 days. She needs to rest, to prepare. I'm sorry, ma'am. Those are my instructions. Charles tried to intervene, but the deputy was clear. The order was legitimate, filed by a concerned party who documented evidence of potential harm, until a judge ruled otherwise. Ava would need to prove she was a fit parent. After the deputy left, Ava sank to the floor in the foyer, the legal papers scattered around her, the beautiful marble floor, the crystal chandelier overhead. All of it felt like a stage set for a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. He's going to take her, she whispered. He's going to take my baby. Charles sat beside her, not caring that his expensive suit was getting wrinkled. No, he's not. We'll fight this. How? He has lawyers, money, connections. He's made me look like a monster in every newspaper in Boston. What judge is going to believe me now? One who sees the truth. What truth? Ava looked at him with eyes that had lost all hope. We don't even know if I'm your daughter. The DNA results haven't come back. For all we know, this whole thing is a coincidence, and I'm just a desperate woman who wanted to believe in a fairy tale. You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore. She pulled her knees to her chest. I should have stayed in that apartment, should have found another way. At least then Lila would be safe. Upstairs, Lila had woken from her nap and was calling for her mother. Her voice drifted down the stairs, small and scared. Mama, where are you? Ava tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. Charles helped her up. Go to your daughter, he said gently. I'll handle the lawyers and the reporters. You just be with Lila. But how could she be with Lila knowing that tomorrow someone might take her away? The hearing was set for 2 o'clock at Suffolk County Family Court. Charles had hired the best family attorney in Boston, but even she was concerned. The problem, Rebecca Chen explained in Charles's study that evening, is that technically, Nathaniel has standing as a concerned citizen who's witnessed concerning behavior. He can petition for an investigation, and given the media attention, the judge will likely err on the side of caution. What does that mean? Ava asked. She'd left Lila sleeping upstairs, exhausted from crying because she could sense something was terribly wrong. It means the judge might order a temporary removal while social services conducts an evaluation, just for a few days, maybe a week. A week, her surgery. The surgery would likely be postponed. The hospital won't operate on a child in state custody without extensive approvals. Ava felt the room spin. She doesn't have time, doctor. Chen said her heart is deteriorating. Every week we wait. I know, and we'll present all of that to the judge. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this doesn't go our way tomorrow. After Rebecca left, Ava sat in the darkening library, watching the last light fade from the sky. Charles found her there an hour later. Lila's asking for you, he said. Mrs. Caldwell is with her, but I can't face her. Ava's voice was hollow. How do I look at my daughter and tell her that tomorrow someone might take her away? How do I explain that I failed to protect her? You haven't failed, haven't I? I brought her here. I exposed her to all of this. I should have known better than to hope for something good. Charles sat beside her. When Evelyn died, I wanted to die too. I couldn't understand why I was still here when she wasn't. Why I had to keep breathing when every breath hurt. He was quiet for a moment. But then I realized, pain means you loved someone. It means something mattered. And that's not failure. That's being human. I can't lose her. Charles, she's all I have. You have me too. Whatever happens tomorrow, you're not alone in this. But even his kindness couldn't penetrate the darkness that had settled over Ava. She'd spent her whole life fighting to survive in the orphanage, fighting through foster care, fighting to build a life with David, fighting to save Lila. And for what? To end up here, broken on the floor, watching everything fall apart. She finally went upstairs to Lila's room. Her daughter was awake, sitting up in bed with tears streaking her pale face. Mama, I heard you crying. Are you sad because of me? No, baby. Never because of you. Is it my heart? Is it getting worse? No, sweetheart. Your heart is doing okay. The lie tasted bitter. Lila was quiet for a moment. Mama, if I die, will you be okay? The question hit like a physical blow. You're not going to die. But if I do? Lila, stop. Ava pulled her daughter close, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, memorizing the feel of her small body. You're going to have your surgery, and you're going to get better, and we're going to grow old together. That's the only ending I'm accepting. Okay, Mama. Lila snuggled closer. I love you. I love you too, baby. More than anything in the world. That night, Ava didn't sleep. She sat in the chair beside Lila's bed, watching her daughter breathe, counting each inhale and exhale like prayers. At dawn, Mrs. Caldwell knocked softly on the door. Her face was pale. Miss Ava, you need to come downstairs now. What's wrong? The DNA results. They've arrived. Ava's heart stopped. She looked at Lila, still sleeping peacefully, then back at Mrs. Caldwell. This was it. The moment that would define everything. Who she was, where she came from, whether she had any right to the help Charles had offered. She followed Mrs. Caldwell downstairs, each step feeling like walking toward either salvation or final judgment. Charles stood in the library, holding an envelope with the lab's logo. His hands were shaking. I haven't opened it yet, he said. I wanted you to be here. Maybe we shouldn't. Ava's voice cracked. Maybe knowing is worse than not knowing. We have to. He held out the envelope. Together, she took one side of the envelope. He took the other. They pulled it open together. The results inside would change everything. The paper trembled between them as Charles read aloud, his voice breaking on every word. Probability of paternity, 97%. The silence that followed was absolute. Ava couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she'd just heard. 27 years of not knowing who she was, where she came from, why she'd been abandoned. And now, in a single sentence, everything had changed. You're my daughter, Charles whispered, and then louder, like he needed to hear it again to believe it. You're Charlotte. You're my daughter. Ava's legs gave out. Charles caught her, and suddenly they were both on the floor, holding each other, crying 27 years worth of tears, all the loss, all the searching, all the grief. It poured out of them in great, shuddering sobs. I looked for you, Charles said against her hair. I never stopped looking. I'm so sorry it took so long. I'm so sorry. You found me, Ava, Charlotte, managed to say. We found each other. Mrs. Caldwell stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her usually composed face. I'll call the lawyers, she said quietly, and I'll prepare the documents for court. They can't take Lila now, not from a legitimate Beaumont. She hurried away, and Charles pulled back to look at Ava properly. Do you want me to call you Charlotte, or do you prefer Ava? I don't know. She wiped her eyes. I've been Ava for 27 years. But Charlotte was who I was supposed to be, who I would have been if... Her face hardened. If Nathaniel hadn't stolen me. We'll prove it. All of it. Charles stood, helping her up. suddenly energized with purpose. We have the DNA results. We have Sister Agnes's testimony. We have the documents. And now we're going to make sure he pays for every single thing he's done. Within an hour, Charles had assembled a team in the Manor's dining room. Rebecca Chen, the family attorney, Marcus Reeves, a criminal investigator, Dr. Rodriguez, who'd processed the DNA test, and Sister Agnes, who'd insisted on staying despite her failing health. "We need to move fast," Rebecca said, spreading documents across the table. "The custody hearing is in 4 hours. We need to not only get it dismissed, but we need to file criminal charges against Nathaniel Pierce before he has a chance to disappear." "Disappear?" Ava asked. "Men like him always have an exit strategy. The moment he realizes he's lost, he'll run, probably have accounts in the Cayman Islands. Property overseas. All of it set up years ago." Marcus opened his laptop. "I've been digging into Pierce's finances since you hired me yesterday. There are red flags everywhere. Money moving through shell corporations. Unexplained deposits dating back 27 years. And," he pulled up a document. "This, a property deed in Costa Rica under the name Nathan Pierce, purchased 26 years ago. His escape plan," Charles said grimly. "He bought it right after stealing Charlotte. There's more." Marcus clicked to another file. "I tracked down the nurse, Patricia Hendricks. She's living in a compound outside San Jose. Very comfortable lifestyle for someone who supposedly disappeared in poverty." He pulled up a photograph. "I called her this morning, pretending to be a journalist researching hospital security. She hung up immediately, but not before I heard panic in her voice. She knows something. Can we get her to testify?" Rebecca asked. "Not voluntarily, but if we threaten extradition for kidnapping, a crime with no statute of limitations, she might decide cooperating is better than a prison sentence." "Do it," Charles said. "Whatever it takes." Sister Agnes spoke up, her voice thin but determined. "I have one more thing, something I didn't mention before." She pulled out a small tape recorder, the old-fashioned kind with actual cassettes. "After Nathaniel threatened me the second time, I started recording our conversations, just in case. This is from 15 years ago, the last time he came to see me." She pressed play. The sound quality was poor, but Nathaniel's voice was unmistakable. "Need to make sure you understand the consequences. That baby doesn't exist anymore. She never existed. And if you try to say otherwise, I'll destroy you. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. You're threatening a nun. I'm protecting an investment. I paid good money to make that problem disappear. You took my money. Now keep your mouth shut." "I never took your money." "No, but Patricia did. And she'll say you were in on it if I ask her to. Who do you think people will believe? A respected architect or an old woman with no proof?" The recording ended with the sound of a door slamming. Rebecca was already typing on her phone. "That's admission of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, bribery, and witness intimidation. Along with the financial records and Sister Agnes's testimony, we have enough to arrest him today." "Then why are we still sitting here?" Ava asked. "Because we need to do this right. If we move too fast, his lawyers will find loopholes. We need to coordinate with the DA's office, get warrants issued, freeze his assets so he can't run." Rebecca looked at Charles. "I need your permission to share the DNA results with the authorities. It'll become public record. I don't care about privacy anymore. I care about justice." Charles took Ava's hand. "We do this together." "Together," she agreed. At 1:30, they arrived at Suffolk County Courthouse. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock, but Rebecca had arranged something better. A meeting with Judge Patricia Morrison in her chambers, along with the district attorney. Nathaniel was already there when they walked in, perfectly composed in his $1,000 suit, his lawyer beside him. He smiled when he saw them. "Charles, Miss Montgomery, I'm glad you're taking this seriously. It's for the best, really. The child needs stability." "Mr. Pierce," Judge Morrison interrupted, her voice cold, "I suggest you stop talking." Nathaniel's smile faltered. "Your Honor." The DA, a stern woman named Catherine Walsh, opened her briefcase. "Mr. Pierce, I'm here to inform you that we're filing criminal charges against you for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, bribery, witness intimidation, and fraud. We have DNA evidence proving that Ava Montgomery is Charlotte Beaumont, daughter of Charles Beaumont. We have testimony placing you at the scene of the crime 27 years ago. We have financial records showing payments to Patricia Hendricks. And we have recorded admissions of your crimes." The color drained from Nathaniel's face. You can't prove. We can prove all of it." Catherine placed a stack of documents on the judge's desk. "We're also moving to freeze your assets and requesting an immediate arrest warrant." Nathaniel turned to Charles, and all pretense dropped. "You're really going to do this? After everything I've done for you, I built that company. I saved it when you were too broken to function. You stole my daughter," Charles said, his voice shaking with rage. "You let me believe she was dead for 27 years. You let my wife die thinking she'd failed to protect our child. And then, when Charlotte finally came back into my life, you tried to take her away again, along with her daughter, my granddaughter. I did what I had to do. You ruined lives for money and power." Charles stepped forward, and it took everything in him not to physically attack Nathaniel. "My wife is dead because of you. My daughter grew up without a family because of you, and you have the audacity to act like you're the victim." "Your Honor," Nathaniel's lawyer interjected, "my client hasn't been formally charged. This is highly irregular." "Your client is about to be arrested," Judge Morrison said. "As for the custody petition, it's dismissed with prejudice. Miss Montgomery, or should I say Miss Beaumont, is clearly a fit parent. And this petition was filed in bad faith as part of a criminal conspiracy." 2 police officers entered the chambers. "Nathaniel Pierce, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy, bribery, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Nathaniel's composure finally shattered. No, you can't. I have rights. I have connections. You can't do this to me." But they could, and they did, as the officers led him away in handcuffs. Nathaniel looked back at Charles one last time. "This isn't over. I'll fight this. You'll lose," Charles said quietly, "because the truth always wins. Eventually." After Nathaniel was gone, Judge Morrison turned to Ava. "Miss Beaumont, I'm sorry for what was done to you, both 27 years ago and in recent weeks. I hope you and your daughter, Lila, is it? I hope you both find peace. Thank you." "Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. News of Nathaniel's arrest had leaked, and suddenly the narrative had shifted. The headlines would no longer call Ava a con artist. They'd tell the real story. A daughter stolen and finally returned home. Charles held a brief press conference on the courthouse steps. 27 years ago, my daughter was taken from me through an unthinkable act of cruelty. Today, she's been returned. Justice is being served. And my family, my daughter Ava, and my granddaughter Lila, will finally have the peace they deserve." As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Ava stood beside her father, feeling the weight of her real name for the first time. Charlotte Beaumont, Ava Montgomery. She was both and neither. She was whoever she chose to be. But most importantly, she was finally home. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock Monday morning in the conference room of Beaumont and Pierce headquarters. Charles arrived early, Ava beside him, both of them ready for the fight. The 12 board members were already seated when they entered. Some looked sympathetic, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. Nathaniel had spent years cultivating these relationships, and his influence didn't disappear overnight just because he'd been arrested. "Ladies and gentlemen," Charles began, standing at the head of the table. "I'm sure you've all seen the news. Nathaniel Pierce has been arrested on charges of kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Board member Thomas Whitfield, a silver-haired banker who'd been Nathaniel's ally for years, cleared his throat. Charles, with all due respect, these are allegations. Nathaniel deserves due process. Firing him based on charges. He confessed," Ava said quietly. The room went silent. "I'm sorry," Whitfield said. "He confessed this morning. His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. The DA has everything. Financial records, witness testimony, recorded admissions," Nathaniel's lawyer said. "Fighting it would only result in a longer sentence." She placed a folder on the table. "These are copies of his signed confession. He admitted to paying Patricia Hendricks $50,000 to fake my death as an infant and deliver me to an orphanage. He admitted to bribing laboratory technicians to delay DNA test results. He admitted to witness intimidation and fraud. She looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. He stole me from my family when I was 2 years old. He let my mother die believing I was dead. He built his career and his fortune on that crime. And when I finally found my way home, he tried to take my daughter away from me. Her voice was steel. So no, Mr. Whitfield. This isn't about allegations. This is about documented crimes and a confession. Margaret Chen, the company's CFO, spoke up. I've been reviewing the financial records. Pierce has been moving money through shell corporations for years. Some of it company funds that he rerouted for personal use. We're talking about millions in embezzlement. Jesus Christ, someone muttered. I'm calling for a vote, Charles said. Nathaniel Pierce is hereby removed from all positions within Beaumont and Pierce Engineering, effective immediately. His 40% stake in the company will be liquidated and used to compensate for his theft and to establish a restitution fund. All in favor? 11 hands went up. Only Whitfield abstained. Motion passes. Charles looked at his daughter. I'm also proposing a change to the company structure. Beaumont and Pierce will be renamed Beaumont and Montgomery Engineering, my daughter. Ava Charlotte Montgomery Beaumont will be named as primary heir and future CEO once she completes the necessary training. I'm not, Ava started, but Charles held up his hand. You don't have to decide today. Take your time, get Lila healthy, figure out who you want to be. But when you're ready, there's a place for you here, if you want it. The vote passed unanimously this time. Even Whitfield raised his hand. That afternoon they gathered in the Manor's library. Charles, Ava, Mrs. Caldwell, Sister Agnes, and the team of lawyers the district attorney had called with an update. Patricia Hendricks has agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence, Catherine Walsh explained. She's provided details about how Nathaniel approached her, what he paid her, everything. With her testimony and the confession, Nathaniel's looking at 20 to 25 years. Is that enough? Ava asked. For stealing someone's entire life. It's what the law allows. But there's more. Catherine opened another file. We've identified 3 other cases where Nathaniel used similar tactics to manipulate business outcomes, bribing officials, falsifying documents, intimidating witnesses. The FBI is now involved. Additional charges are likely. He'll die in prison, Charles said. There was no satisfaction in his voice, only exhaustion. Probably, Catherine agreed. He's 48 now, even with good behavior. He won't be eligible for parole until he's in his 70s. Sister Agnes, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. I don't take joy in anyone's suffering, but I'm glad he can't hurt anyone else. Amen to that, Mrs. Caldwell said softly. After the lawyers left, Ava found Charles standing at the window, looking out at the garden where Lila was playing with Mrs. Caldwell's niece, a teenager who'd been hired as a part-time nanny. Are you okay? Ava asked. I don't know. I keep thinking about all the years we lost. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. I missed your entire childhood. Your wedding, Lila's birth. His voice cracked. I can't get those back. No, Ava agreed, moving to stand beside him. But we can make new memories, starting now. I want that, more than anything. He turned to face her. But I also want you to know, you don't owe me anything. Just because I'm your biological father doesn't mean you have to feel any particular way about me. We're essentially strangers who happen to share DNA. That's not true. Ava took his hand. We're not strangers. Maybe we were a month ago, but not anymore. You've been more of a father to me in these few weeks than I ever expected to have. And Lila, she adores you. She calls you Grandpa Charles when she thinks we're not listening. Charles's eyes filled with tears. She does. She does. So no, I don't owe you anything. But I want you in our lives, if you want to be there, more than anything in the world. They stood together, watching Lila laugh and spin in the autumn sunlight, and for the first time in 27 years, both of them felt something like peace. 2 days later, Nathaniel Pierce was arraigned in Suffolk County Superior Court. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and several of his former business associates who'd been subpoenaed as witnesses. Nathaniel had aged a decade in just a few days. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. His face was gaunt, and his hands shook as he stood before the judge. "Nathaniel Pierce," Judge Morrison said, "you've entered a guilty plea to multiple counts of kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and witness intimidation. Before I accept this plea and pronounce sentence, do you have anything you'd like to say?" Nathaniel's lawyer whispered something to him, but Nathaniel shook his head. He looked directly at Charles and Ava, sitting in the front row. "I'm not going to apologize," he said, his voice hoarse, "because I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm sorry I got caught. That's all." He laughed bitterly. "You want to know why I did it? Because I was nobody. A kid from nowhere with student loans and no prospects. Then Patricia came to me with a proposition. $50,000 to help her cover up a mistake. That's what she called it. A mistake. Mr. Pierce," the judge warned. "I took the money, I helped her, and then I used that money to build something, to become someone. Everything I achieved I earned through my own brilliance and hard work. But it all started with that $50,000. He looked at Ava. "So no, I'm not sorry I took you. I'm sorry you came back and ruined everything." The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed her gavel repeatedly. "Order, Mr. Pierce. That's enough." But Nathaniel wasn't finished. "You think you've won? You think justice has been served? Charles, you're still the man who was so obsessed with work that he left his daughter alone in a hospital. You think I'm the villain, but you failed her first, and you..." He pointed at Ava. "You're just a gold digger who got lucky. You hit the genetic lottery. Congratulations." "That's enough." Judge Morrison's voice cracked like thunder. "Mr. Pierce, your complete lack of remorse has been noted, Nathaniel Pierce. I hereby sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. In addition, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $15 million to the victims of your crimes. You will serve your sentence at FCI Devons. Bailiff, remove the defendant." As officers moved to escort him out, Nathaniel looked back one final time. "I hope it was worth it, Charles. I hope she's everything you dreamed of, because you paid for her with 27 years of my life." "No," Charles said, standing. "You paid with 27 years of hers, and mine, and Evelyn's. Don't you dare pretend to be the victim here." Nathaniel smiled that cold smile one last time. Then he was gone, led away in chains, and the courtroom slowly emptied. Outside, on the courthouse steps, reporters crowded around. "Miss Beaumont, how does it feel to have justice? Mr. Beaumont, what's next for your family?" Charles held up his hand. "My daughter and I are focused on what matters. Helping our granddaughter recover from her surgery and building the family we were denied for so long. Nathaniel Pierce will spend the rest of his life paying for his crimes. That's all the closure we need." They pushed through the crowd to the waiting car. As they drove away, Ava looked back at the courthouse one last time. "Is it really over?" she asked. "The legal part is," Charles said. "The healing part, that's just beginning. I can live with that." They drove home through Boston streets already decorated for the approaching holidays. And for the first time in her life, Ava felt like she truly had a home to go to. 3 months later, spring had arrived in Boston with an explosion of color. The gardens at Beaumont Manor, neglected for years, had been professionally restored. Cherry blossoms lined the walkways. Tulips burst from every flower bed, and the air smelled of fresh earth and new beginnings. Lila Montgomery Beaumont, she'd insisted on keeping both names, sat on a blanket in the middle of the lawn, her cheeks pink with health, her laughter bright as sunlight. The surgery had been a complete success. Dr. Chen had called it a miracle, but Ava knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was medicine, love, and sheer stubborn will to survive. "Grandpa, watch this." Lila did a cartwheel, wobbly but triumphant. Charles applauded from his chair on the terrace. "Spectacular, do another one." Ava watched from the French doors, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Mrs. Caldwell appeared beside her, carrying a tray of pastries fresh from the kitchen. "She's thriving," the governess said with satisfaction. "Color in her cheeks, energy for days. That child is going to run us all ragged." "Good," Ava said. "That's exactly what 5-year-olds should do." "And you? How are you adjusting to all of this?" Mrs. Caldwell gestured around at the manor, the gardens, the life that still felt surreal sometimes. "I'm getting there. Some days I wake up and forget where I am. I reach for the alarm clock that should be on my nightstand in the apartment, and instead, I'm in a room bigger than my entire old place. Ava smiled. But then I hear Lila laughing, and I remember, this is real. This is our life now. Good. You deserve it, both of you. Mrs. Caldwell set down the tray. I'm heading into the city this afternoon. Sister Agnes is being discharged from the hospice care facility. She wants to spend her final weeks somewhere peaceful. I thought perhaps, bring her here, Ava said immediately. She should be with family. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes grew bright. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll have the East Wing suite prepared. After she left, Ava walked down to join Charles and Lila on the lawn. Her daughter immediately tackled her legs. Mama, I can do 3 cartwheels in a row now, wanna see? I absolutely wanna see. While Lila demonstrated her newfound gymnastic skills, Charles patted the chair beside him. Ava sat, and they watched Lila play in comfortable silence. I got a call from the foundation director this morning, Charles said eventually. The Charlotte's Promise Foundation. They've already helped 12 families with documentation issues. 12 children who might have spent their lives without legal identities now have birth certificates, social security numbers, futures. The foundation had been Ava's idea, using the restitution money from Nathaniel's conviction to help children in situations similar to hers. Children lost in the cracks of the system, denied identities and opportunities because of paperwork that never existed or had been destroyed. Only 12, Ava said. We can do better. That's what the director said. She wants to expand to other states. I told her we'd triple the funding. You're a good man, Charles Beaumont. I'm trying to make up for lost time. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about what Nathaniel said, about how I failed you first by not being there that night. Don't. Ava's voice was firm. He was trying to hurt you. You didn't fail anyone. You were building a business to support your family. That's what parents do. But if I'd been there, then Nathaniel probably would have found another night, another opportunity. Men like him always do. She took his hand. You can't rewrite the past. Neither of us can. All we can do is make sure the future is different. Lila ran over, breathless and glowing. I'm hungry. Can we have a picnic, please? A picnic sounds perfect, Charles said. Mrs. Caldwell just brought out enough food to feed an army. They spent the afternoon on the lawn, 3 generations finally together, eating sandwiches and fruit, telling stories, laughing. Lila fell asleep eventually, curled up on the blanket with her head in Ava's lap. She looks like Evelyn when she sleeps, Charles said softly. Same peaceful expression, like the whole world is right. Tell me about her. Your wife? My mother. Ava stroked Lila's hair. All I have are facts from documents. I want to know who she really was. So Charles told her about how Evelyn had been a teacher before Lila was born, how she'd loved classical music and terrible puns, how she'd insisted on putting up Christmas decorations the day after Thanksgiving, despite Charles's protests, about how she'd painted the nursery herself, every wall a different color because she couldn't choose just one. She would have loved you, he said, his voice thick. The woman you've become. Strong, compassionate, fierce when it comes to protecting Lila. That's all Evelyn. She would have been so proud. I wish I could remember her. You were so young, but maybe... He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. I had these digitized last week from the old albums. He showed Ava pictures of Evelyn. Beautiful, dark-haired, laughing in every shot. And then pictures of baby Charlotte, being held by her mother, playing in this very garden, sleeping in Charles's arms. That's me, Ava whispered, touching the screen. That's really me. That's you. That's us. That's what we were before everything fell apart. He swiped to the last photo. Charles, Evelyn, and baby Charlotte, all together, all smiling. And this is what we're building again. Different, but still family. A week later, Sister Agnes arrived at the manor. She was frailer than before, her cancer advancing rapidly, but her mind was sharp and her spirits surprisingly high. I'm ready, she told Ava as they settled her into the East Wing suite. I've made my peace. I told the truth, saw justice served. Now I can rest. Don't talk like that, Ava said, adjusting the pillows. You're going to be around for years yet. Child, we both know that's not true, and that's okay. Sister Agnes took her hand. I wanted to give you something before I go. Something I've kept all these years. She pulled out a small wooden box from her bag. Inside was a child's silver bracelet, tarnished with age, with a tiny charm shaped like a heart. Your mother gave this to you the day you were born. It was on your wrist when they brought you to the hospital that night. The nurse took it off when Sister Agnes's voice cracked. When she did what she did, but I found it in your bassinet at the orphanage. I kept it safe. Ava held the bracelet, and something in her chest loosened. A connection to her mother, her real mother, preserved across 27 years. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for keeping the records, for telling the truth, for this. You were always worth protecting. Ava Charlotte, always. Sister Agnes passed away peacefully 3 weeks later, surrounded by the family she'd helped reunite. Mrs. Caldwell cried for the first time since Ava had known her. Charles delivered the eulogy at her funeral, calling her a hero who'd risked everything for truth. They buried her in the family plot next to Evelyn, because Sister Agnes had been family in all the ways that mattered. 6 months after Nathaniel's conviction, the new sign went up at company headquarters, Beaumont and Montgomery Engineering. Ava had started taking business courses online, though she'd made it clear she was in no rush to take over. For now, she was content to learn, to help with the foundation, and most importantly, to be present for Lila. On a warm Sunday evening in June, the three of them sat on the terrace watching the sun set over Boston. Lila was drawing in her sketchbook, completely absorbed. Charles was reading the newspaper. Ava was simply breathing, grateful for the moment. Mama, Lila looked up from her drawing. Can I show you something? She held up her sketchbook. The drawing showed 4 figures holding hands. A little girl, a woman, a man, and a ghostly figure made of soft colors hovering above them. Who's that? Ava asked, pointing to the ghost. Great-Grandma Evelyn, Lila said matter-of-factly. She's always watching over us. She told me so. Ava and Charles exchanged glances. They'd never told Lila about Evelyn's spirit, never discussed anything supernatural, but children sometimes knew things adults couldn't explain. She says she's proud of you, Mama, and she says Grandpa Charles should stop feeling guilty because she forgives him. Charles's hand went to his mouth, tears streaming down his face. She also says the garden is beautiful now, and we should plant more roses. Red ones were her favorite. Lila went back to her drawing as if she hadn't just delivered messages from beyond, leaving the 2 adults stunned into silence. Finally, Charles spoke. We'll plant roses tomorrow. Red ones. Red ones, Ava agreed. As darkness fell and stars began to emerge, they sat together, 3 generations bound by DNA and something stronger than DNA, bound by choice, by love, by the stubborn refusal to let pain win. The past had been stolen from them, but the future was theirs to write, and they were going to fill it with love, laughter, red roses, and all the time they'd been denied. Ava looked at the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one her mother had given her at birth. Now restored to her, she touched it like a talisman, a reminder that even when everything is taken away, love finds a way to survive. In the garden, the roses that Mrs. Caldwell had planted that morning were already beginning to bloom, bright red against the green. A promise kept, a circle completed. Peace, finally, after the storm.